From a grey base coat, paint all of the armour using Kantor Blue. Paint all the undersuit between the joints in Mechanicus Standard Grey. Paint all the areas to be black, so mainly the body of the bolter in Abaddon black. Also pick out any areas to be silver, such as the eagle on the chest and the parts of the backpack in Abaddon black as well at this stage. Paint the leather pouches with Doombull Brown. Paint the left fist using Khorne Red. Paint all the silver areas, so the silver areas on the bolter, the chest eagle, the backpack, using a layer of iron hand steel. Pick out all the recesses using Black Templar Contrast. This step is probably the longest step in the whole process, and any mistakes can be reasonably easily corrected because Kantor Blue is quite a good covering paint, but as best you can, unlike I did there, endeavour to keep the wash only in the recesses. Also cover all of the undersuit areas with Black Templar at this stage as well. I also painted the areas between the fingers and the joints on the fist with Black Templar as well. I was going to go with the dark red, but actually the black makes a bigger contrast and makes the subsequent highlights stand out a bit more. Wash the silver areas with Nuln Oil. At this stage I went back to Khorne Red to tidy up the fingers on the bolter. The Black Templar, while giving good recess shading, isn't easiest to use on very small areas, so this reapplication of the base coat will make the next stages a bit easier. Then pick out all the edges with Alatioc Blue. Much like I said in the Black Templar stage, this is the longest stage in the model. Actually this one truthfully is, it just takes ages because there's so many sharp edges on the Primaris Marines. Thankfully a lot of them allow for picking out the edges with the side of the brush, so for example the edges of the shoulder pauldrons, but there are some areas where needs nothing more than just painting straight lines, slow and steady. The example here being on the softer edges of the helmet. I I then applied a second finer highlight to the sharper corners in Hoeth Blue. This does not need to be over all of the areas, the prominent corners would suffice, but by the time I was done with this stage I ended up doing a lot more of the edges than I thought. The more of this colour you add, the more cartoon-esque the finish is. A finish I quite like, but if you want to keep it more realistic, smaller areas. Pay particular note to any of the rivets on the armour, as painting them in the brighter blue will make them stand out significantly. Highlight on the Crimson Fist is with Wazdakka Red, picking out the distal areas of the fingers and the sharpest edges on the remainder of the hand. Paint the extreme edges then with Squig Orange to make these areas stand out, so the tips of the finger joints and the sharper edges on the rest of the fist. Edge highlight the black areas in the bolter using Eshin Grey. Again, when there's an opportunity to use the edge of the brush, do, but unfortunately with this part of the model a lot of it just needs to be fine lines painted along at least straight line edges. Pick out the corners of the black areas then with the second highlight of Administratum Grey. Of particular note also picking out the rivets on the gun. Pick out the central raised areas on the undersuit with Mechanicus Standard Grey. Wash the Doombull Brown leather areas with a mix of 1:1 Wyldwood Contrast and Contrast Medium. I'm taking note to make sure that this doesn't settle too much and to wick away any excess. Edge highlight the silver areas with Stormhost Silver. And yet again, picking out sharp edges where you can with the edge of the brush and painting fine lines where this isn't possible. Also at this stage, pick out the sharpest edges on the chest eagle. For a lot of these models this is obscured, so any areas you can't see easily, there's no real point in doing it because you won't be able to see it. But any parts of the eagle that are clearly visible is worth highlighting at this stage. Edge highlight the leather areas with Skrag Brown. In addition, on any flat areas you can paint very fine lines to give the illusion of scratches onto the leather. Paint the wax of the purity seal with Caliban Green. wash this area then with Nuln Oil. Paint the centre and the raised edges with Warpstone Glow, making sure to leave an area of darkness around the centre. In some models this is clearly modelled onto it, but on this one it's quite flat, so use the paint to give the illusion that the wax recesses into the corners. Paint a finer area on the raised edges and on the centre with Moot Green. Paint fine dot highlights on the extreme edges using Yriel Yellow. Paint the parchment aspects of the purity seal with Zandri Dust. Using Agrax Earthshade, shade the recesses between the parchment sheets and the area closest to the wax with Agrax Earthshade. Paint the raised areas, in fact most of the parchment, using Ushabti Bone to give the illusion of the material. All brush strokes should run perpendicular to the run of the parchment, so paint them all side to side. Just adds to the effect of just not only being colour but being the impression of paper. Repeat this process once more using Screaming Skull, but trying only to pick out the most prominent raised areas on the parchment and the absolute edges of the material as well. Using very thin Abaddon Black, you can paint on the impression of writing onto the parchment using small stabbing motions. This isn't exactly necessary, but it adds to the effect of the purity seal and is worth even for practice for small brush strokes and painting small lines. Again with Abaddon Black, pick out the entirety of the eye lenses. Paint the front 2/3 of the lenses with Mephiston Red. Paint the front 1/3 of the lens with Evil Sunz Scarlett. Paint a small amount of the lens with Fire Dragon Bright, which wasn't recorded unfortunately, and after that paint a dot of Yriel Yellow right at the front of the lens. Paint a dot of Corax White at the back of the lens in the middle of the darkest part to give the illusion of reflection. You could of course do the eagle and the gun silver. For a bit of variety we can paint this gold, starting with the base layer of Retributor Armour. shade the gold area with Guilliman Flesh Contrast. Paint the edges, so the upper edges of the wings and the top of the skull, using Liberator Gold. And this is the completed model. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to check out any number of other videos about Warhammer and other model painting.